Corporate media blames kamikaze attack on Tea Parties. It's all over the news. I said hour one that if it's big and promoted and if they're already ready and organized and say it's the Tea Parties, get ready, it's a staged event. I got some emails, saw some websites. Oh, look at Jones saying it's Austin and it's a staged event. Ridiculous. It's a heart attack. And then, well, he's right about that, but still screw him. You know, the governor isn't after him. Nobody knows who he is. You know, this is really going on. I mean, this is real, folks. This affects everybody. They love to stage events against themselves, not just to scare the public into submission, but to create the culture of paranoia in the feds of the public's your enemy. And you've got to, I mean, this is a psyop. And I'm pretty sure this is staged in my gut, which is never wrong, unfortunately. But we've got to continue to follow the intellectual evidence and the scientific evidence and the journalistic evidence. And I just go with the facts. And he could be a lone nut, but everything points towards it being staged. And you see Texas about to lead the country towards states' rights. You see the staged attacks on Medina. Jason Douglas, your comments on this. I mean, I want your real opinion. Give me your real opinion. Working here a year, seeing all this, seeing me say they're going to attack Austin. You watch the next attack, Austin. Could be an attack on a building, could be a plane. It's confirmed federal informants are trying to provocateur people into bombing Brave New Books. I mean, this is real. Yeah. I mean, all you can do, really, is there's so many different perspectives you have to look at the world in when you're looking through the InfoWars perspective. But the thing that really struck me was, and I was in the gaggle of journalists at the site, and they just kept going, I can't believe how fast this information is coming out. I mean, they were perplexed as to, you know, how they came up with this information so fast. And the last time I remember that happening was 9/11. It's just, how do they... Wait a minute, you were with journalists, and they in Austin were like, how do they already know all this? Right. Yeah. And that they're divulging it already. And then how careful... Because normally they'll make you wait 6 weeks to find out if it's not... when it's not staged, like the shooting at the Capitol, the guy shooting the gun, that didn't get any traction. I mean, real stuff gets ignored. Right. Yeah, that barely made the news. Continue. That's key, what you just said. Yeah, so they were flabbergasted as to how... Now, break it down. Where you were, the groups of media. I know you won't know their names. We have video of all this, but what they were saying. Yeah, it was all the major groups. Fox was there. CNN was there. They were local people that were, you know, hired out, but that's what they were making comments on, how fast the information was being disseminated. And then I noticed that the press crew that came up, Acevedo and Leffingwell, they made it really clear that this was not a terrorist act. But then to know that all the headlines are, you know, making these Tea Party connections. So it's almost as if, you know, they do that to gain credibility. Right. Like, oh, we're waiting. Right. But then, yeah, okay. But then an hour later, oh, it is a attack. And, you know, take your guns. Don't worry. So it just seems like it's going through all the propaganda channels. But the media was saying, how do they know this so early? Yep. Well, the people there, they're not reporting it. You know, they're just mentioning. No, but describe it. You see reporters behind cameras, people talking, pads of paper. Oh, yeah. You know, we're all pressed in because that's how it is at those moments. You know, you're trying to interview one person and there's 60 media people on the side. And so you're all pressed in together. And I just hear all these comments. Where are they getting this information so fast? How come this is happening so fast? And it did. It just seemed like they were pouring out all of this information. But, you know, usually you're a lot more reticent to say anything, especially when you're in an official role. But then Acevedo kept making comments like, you know, irresponsible reporters who were saying that it wasn't his plane or it was his, you know, no one can make conjecture, but. Well, he does that to be the authority. That Acevedo, he's something else. Yeah, they're just planting little seeds. So how many reporters, roughly? I mean, they were saying, how do they know so quick? Well, I mean, so they were suspicious? Yeah, there was probably 25. There was more when I was there, because that's when the press crew first came out. So I'm going to do something. Instead of being interrupting, I want free flow. I did this with Ike today. I'm going to walk out for 5 minutes, and I'm going to come back to you. I want you guys to just talk about whatever you want right now. Go ahead. Well, one quick thing. I just want, I hope the people out there just say a prayer for Joe's wife and daughter, because it sounds like they were in the house when it was put on fire, and they got out. And were taken away. So I feel really bad for them. And, you know, and then knowing Joe, I'm really finding it hard to believe that Joe did this. And that could be just me, you know, from knowing the guy. And other than that, taking the personal element out of it,
you know, the neighbors, I thought it was interesting that the neighbors didn't really know the guy at all.
I thought it was interesting that they wouldn't even come to the door.
Yeah.
I mean, if something like that happened, I'd want to be sharing it with somebody.
Right. He was a great guy, or he was a mean guy, or whatever. You know, you'd think you'd want to be, you know, telling people. And it was really hard to get neighbors to talk. Only one guy would talk with us on camera, and he was the guy that called 911. So at least he thinks he was the first guy from his opinion. So that would be interesting to find out if he was the first guy that actually called 911, or if it was somebody else, because he thought it was that they got there really quickly, because he was praising them for how fast they arrived on scene for the house fire at
that's all you keep on hearing on how fast the response time was. And I mean, 5 minutes during a fire can seem like a lot, but that's pretty quick.
That depended on where
to come in,
where the department is. But it was very very weird typing up Joe's name in the search engine and just seeing that picture, because that, you know,
that was haunting you all day, and you kept making the music association saying, "Is he a jazz musician?" I mean, I know him.
Yeah, from somewhere. And it's, you know, and I hadn't seen him in a couple years, but he, you know, when I knew him, and I talked to a guy after I found that out. I called a guy that I knew him very well, and he'd seen him about 2 weeks ago. They were exchanging microphones because they were each doing different types of recording. So, but he said, you know, out of everybody that he knew, Joe always seemed to have his stuff together, compared to, you know, other musicians. And when you're in Austin, musicians usually don't have their stuff together. They're, you know, a ragtag bunch. But Joe always was clean cut, dressed neat. And, you know, maybe that's, you know, if he was some sort of double agent or some sort of agent, then, you know, I never saw it. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they come out and say about, you know, when it's somebody you don't know, you have a totally different perspective of it, because my perspective has changed since, you know, knowing that I knew the guy.
Right. Just to interrupt, I want you guys to go another 5 minutes or so, but go back to those reporters first, because that's key. That reporters think back to exactly what they were saying, Jason and Rob, because that's key that they were saying this is weird, because the public doesn't know how reporting works, that an hour and a half after it happens, how do they already know all this?
Right. And these guys were, you know, they knew exactly.
And then go back to the house and the neighbors. I mean, let's really debrief, really think of things you didn't think of.
Why don't you go first?
Go back to your memory. Think of what you didn't talk about.
All right. You were at the, you hit that press conference area first, so what were they talking about in the press conference when you got there?
So when I first walked up, you know, there was a gaggle of journalists and their camera people, and they were shooting the building. So I walk around the side and tried to find a good shot. As soon as I got there, I noticed that, you know, there was a large group of official people walking up. It was Acevedo, Leffingwell, this fire chief. And so I squeezed into the gaggle trying to get in to get their comments. And as they were, you know, giving us all the points that they had previously agreed to let go, you know, you just kept hearing these whispers like, boy, this is really quick. I can't believe this stuff is coming out so quickly. And they just seemed really surprised at how this was unfolding.
Yeah. And when I got there, I was trying to go around a different way, and I got stopped, so I came back around, and I got a tail end of they were doing an interview with the fire chief, and she was, you know, talking about how they had the fire pretty much under control. They were going to start going in and looking around, but at the time, somebody said, "Were you afraid the building was going to collapse?" And she said, "Oh yes, we were definitely afraid. We've seen this happen before."
Right. And she made it sound very plural, though.
Yeah,
this was, you know, a very common thing now.
Right.
And she even made it sound like it was now. Like nowadays, steel does melt a lot easier than it used to.
Yeah. We're making steel out of flour or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like Chinese steel.
But that whole situation was interesting. I taped a little bit of a guy who worked in the building. They were on one of the top floors, and they, you know, when they said when it happens, you know, they had done drills before. You know, they once a month they do a drill for evacuation, and you know, he ran around. They were telling people to get out of the building, get out of the building, get out of the building, and you know, they cleared out their floors.